Welcome to Hot Takes, brought to you by 50cupstea.com, where united we sip, discuss, and learn. Join us as we dive into the hottest takes on culture, business trends, and the threads that bind us. Get ready for inspiring stories, candid conversations, and a fresh perspective on living a healthy, fulfilled life. Grab your cup and tune in. Let's get started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 50 Cups Hot Take. And it's the Wisdom series, which I really enjoy a lot because, quite frankly, as we age, and I'm in that group now, I hope I'm smarter today than I was when I was 20 years old. But this, of course, is brought to you by 50 Cups Tea Company. Jim Baker, successful entrepreneur, is also the owner of this particular company. And he perks us all by bringing in some wonderfully good tea. What do we have today?
Got this remember last time we did this a week or so ago, and you really loved the cinnamon tea? So I brought back the same stuff today.
I thought it was
perfect day for this.
Oh, it really is.
Decaffeinated, it's healthy. Yeah. Cinnamon's great for you.
Yeah.
As long as you don't ingest too much of it, otherwise you may have some problems, but it's all good.
And for all those people who are going, my goodness, what can I get for my very special person on my list? What a great idea this would be, wouldn't it, Jim?
Absolutely. 50cupstea.com. But today, I'm speaking of wisdom. I have a friend of mine who has a lot of wisdom, and he's somewhat reluctant to come on our podcast, but I was able to talk him into it. And I'm happy to have Dave Tomick here today with us. And I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Well, Dave, thank you so much for doing this.
Pleasure.
Why don't you just start with an easy question? Tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, right now, not a whole lot of anything, but I did for a long time. So right now I live here in Cary. I have two boys, one granddaughter. The boys live both from within 2 miles of me, which I thought was good planning on my part.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm second generation. My grandfather on my dad's side came here in the early 1900s from Croatia without a nickel to his name. And he changed somewhere along the name. The name got changed from Tomic, which is why people don't automatically recognize I'm Croatian, to Tomick. I guess they thought it sounded a little more upscale. So anyway, my grandfather came here, moved out to Montana for a while, worked in the mines, and then ended up in Cleveland, Ohio, where he was a bus driver for the city system.
What about you? You're just growing up. You kind of mentioned, your father and your grandfather. I'm just kind of curious what it was like for you growing up with your family, who was in your family. And
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it's a pretty good story, really. We lived in a lower middle class ethnic neighborhood. Germans, Poles, a lot of Poles. Very much working. I think my dad, who was a purchasing agent back then, he'd originally come out of school and worked at the Y. He was always into physical education, but he was a purchasing agent. I think he was the only guy in the neighborhood that wore a tie to work. Everyone else was working in the factories. So I grew up. It was a great way to grow up. We didn't know we didn't have any money because we still were having fun. We lived on a one-way street in Cleveland, in the city of Cleveland itself, not some fancy suburb. And it was a one-way street that had about 4 or 5 houses on each side and dead-ended into a cemetery, which made it great for Halloween. Anyway, growing up on a one-way street is really fun because, particularly back then, so almost all the mothers stay-at-home moms. There was only one car in the family. So there was no traffic on our street, right? Only at 8 in the morning and 5 at night. So we could play, we played wiffle ball and football. When it snowed, we shoveled the street, played hockey in our boots. It was a very, very good way to grow up. And then, so got used to, hanging out with people of different ethnic backgrounds and the like, a lot of immigrants like us. And then I ended up in a public middle school. Back then they called it a junior high that was predominantly African-American. And again, not in a great neighborhood. And when the riots broke out in the 60s, they were in Cleveland, they were in, L.A. and Detroit and everywhere. And
Right.
It's kind of a scary time. I remember getting picked up by my grandfather in the middle of the school day, because it was no longer safe. There were National Guard troops on the street corners, which unfortunately we haven't seen until today. So we moved, and I got into a new school, and this was kind of interesting. I went from a school that's predominantly African American to one that was almost entirely Jewish. School started right after Labor Day, and you went to school for 3 or 4 days, and then Rosh Hashanah came, and there were 1,000 students in the school, and then Rosh Hashanah there were about 50 of us. So you went to homeroom for a little while, read a book or something, and then by lunchtime you were in the gym shooting baskets. It was an interesting experience. It was, I look back on it, and there were a lot of, parents of my classmates that were Holocaust survivors, right? So It was a very different milieu to be in the middle of. But I enjoyed it. I made a lot of friends. I was always into sports, and that way you make a lot of friends and keep yourself busy and out of trouble. I was then lucky enough, I got a scholarship to one of the best prep schools in Ohio. Today it's one of the best prep schools probably in the country. My dad had known their athletic director for years and years, and so my older brother and I went to school there, and it was great. It was a phenomenal education, which led me then, I ended up at Denison University in Ohio, again on a scholarship, again a great university. So I'm fairly well educated, actually, for a kid who came off of Proctor Court. I went to Chicago. My brother was there after school. I went to Chicago. I went to work for a pretty large bank who put me through business school. And I spent a lot of time as a banker, commercial banker there. Got my MBA at night. Again, I'm pretty well educated. Helps. And, worked there for a long time. Want me to keep going?
Yeah. So when you were at Denison, did you know that you wanted to get into banking, or did you just?
No, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. None whatsoever. I was a history major, which I always enjoyed. I was always an avid reader, still am. As a kid, I can remember even in the city, the library ran special, during the summer, if you read 10 books, I'd read 50. We're not talking Faulkner here. I mean, I'm reading the Hardy Boys and every book about.
Oh, that's my favorite series, the Hardy Boys.
The Hardy Boys. I read every one of the Hardy Boys. I read a lot of Davy Crockett and every one of the Bond books. Actually, I read back then, but that was before the movies were even big. So yeah, I had no idea. I get out of school. My older brother, was going to Lake Forest College here in Illinois, and the bank leased this great big huge house in Lake Forest, which is a very, very wealthy neighborhood. And my brother decided, instead of coming home to Cleveland on his summer break, that he would stay up there, and he got a job on the grounds crew for the college. Well, the college is right across the street from this big house that the bank was leasing to do executive training sessions. So they had all this valuable furniture in the house, and so they needed someone to be a caretaker. So my brother, as a 20-year-old or 21-year-old, moves into a 12-bedroom house in Lake Forest, Illinois.
Sweet. Wow.
So 2 summers of college, when I was still in Cleveland and only 16, I had 2 factory jobs in the summer. The first one working in a place my dad had worked in that made car antennas. I was on the assembly line, so I learned how unions work or don't work. And then I worked in a plastic factory where they made, like, spatulas, for example. One year I think I made 100,000 spatulas. So this was a hell of a job. The door would open and you'd pull this thing off. It was blazing hot, and you'd skim off the cup, and you'd close the door and you'd put that down, and you did that for 8 hours a day. And that's why
it was a good job, though. People gravitated to the factory jobs then.
Yeah, no, it paid well for a 15, 17-year-old kid.
Oh, heck yeah.
It made me realize that wasn't what I wanted to do, though. So So anyway, my brother. So in the summertime, I would work for my brother, bust dishes or bartend or whatever they needed. So I got to know the people. So when my brother moved downtown to work in the bank itself, they needed somebody to live in this house and do the same thing. So I did that for a year and then realized I had to do something better. That's when I went into business school. I went into a training program they had for liberal arts. It was an interesting concept. They had a training program for liberal arts students to come into the banking business and put you through business school and rotate you through 4 or 5 different divisions so you could see how it worked. And so I did that and stayed. I ended up staying there for like 14 years. I was a commercial banker. Did reasonably well at that until it kind of got a little boring. So luck, a lot of what you guys are talking about here and wisdom and things like that. And there's a lot of things you can do in terms of trying to get ahead, which was, you work hard, read a lot,
right? You
pay attention to what's going on, but some of it's luck, right? So I'm in this bank and I'm bored. I'd had a personal setback, which I'll tell you about in a bit after I finish this. So I was bored and I was lending money at the time to a lot of telecom companies, cable TV, which was still fairly new back in the 80s, radio stations, the TV stations, things like that. Anyway, these 2 guys that ran a cable brokerage approached me about coming to work for them in Denver. And I didn't know much about them. So I was at a cable TV convention standing next to the CEO of one of my customers. And I asked him about these guys. I was standing next to the guy at the urinal, actually. And I asked him about these 2 guys trying to hire me. And the CEO says, "You'd leave the bank?" I said, "Sure, I need an opportunity." So sure enough, I went to work for him in Los Angeles in the cable TV business in 1988. And I left the Midwest for the first time in my life. I was 36, I think. And I remember buying my first Christmas tree wearing sandals and a shorts T-shirt.
Nice, especially coming from a snowy climate.
From Chicago, which is got off in the winter. So I said, well, I'm never going back where it's cold. And I haven't since.
How did you go from banking into cable? I mean, are they similar in a lot of ways?
Well, no, I was lending them money.
Yeah.
The bank was lending them money, so then I went there to be VP Finance so I could borrow money from the bank. So I found out it was much more fun to borrow money than to lend money in creative circumstances. That's what I ended up doing the rest of my life, was financing operations of companies. There was an intermediate step, but we ended up here in Cary, where we started a wireless tower company, just when cell phones, I don't know if you remember, late 80s, the CEO had one, not everyone else had one. And they were yay big and cost, $6 a minute or whatever it was.
Yes.
So we got in the wireless business just as it was starting to take off. And it was a phenomenal business. We had a very wild ride here. We started it in 97. We raised $10 million. In 2000, we went public with a merger. And we were valued at about $3 billion by the market. No one here in Cary even knew who we were. And then we got caught up in the tech bubble of the early 2000s. And so in about 2000, we were valued at about $3 billion. And 18 months later, we filed for bankruptcy.
Wow.
Because we had over-levered the company. We went through bankruptcy, fortunately kept our positions because they knew it was a good business, just had been over-levered. And we came out of bankruptcy about 18 months later, and the year after that, it was valued at $4 billion. And so we sold it. But along the way, going back to the luck, I had gone, when I went to California, I was single. I had been married before. You talked about what I was going to do out of Denison. At Denison, I had a girlfriend, and we got married. And about, 6, 7 years into it, she realizes she's gay, right? So it's kind of a pretty hard hit to the stomach, right?
Yes, I can imagine that. Yes.
So, yes. It was a terrible situation. It wasn't, it was one of these, wasn't anyone's fault, right? She was a, terrific person. And I just wish she'd figured it out early before I went through it. I was very fortunate. My older brother lived in Chicago at that time, and he and his wife were great. I think they had me over for dinner like on Sunday night for like 3 straight years, every Sunday, just because I wasn't very happy. Anyway, when I got lucky to meet the guy in the cable business, I also met my wife out there. She was living in New York and I was living in LA, and we were working on a business deal together. So that, turned out to be a lucky break both ways around.
It is amazing how something that feels bad can turn around in an instant, and it's a whole new life for yourself. And it works out well. What motivated you throughout this period of your life? I'm curious, was it you were going after something you wanted to do, or was it money, or what was it?
No, it was never money.
Yeah?
Although it turned out to be pretty good. I'm better to make some than not, but that was never it was any things that were interesting. I was always able to kind of chase those things that were the hot new things. Cable was coming out big at the time. It was, most people don't realize. I mean, HBO only came out in like 81 or 82 or something like that. So that was, when I got into that, it was a growing business. I was very early on as people started using phones. I was very early on financing that stuff. And then there was an intermediate stop before I got here. We went, the big phone companies had been deregulated and they were getting into different businesses. And there was a venture firm that opened a shop in Birmingham, Alabama, in the home security business. And that was kind of where these guys were trying to diversify. So that was for a while a hot business. Turned out not to be very good. But anyway, I went there for 3 years. It was pretty funny. My wife, who had moved from Manhattan to Los Angeles, where we had our 2 boys, when I said, we're going to Birmingham, I had to pull out a map and show her where it was. When I was a banker, I used to have a lot of customers there. And I found that I would travel all over Louisiana and Alabama and South Carolina. It's pretty if you get to the right places and the quiet lifestyle. So anyway, we went there because that was hot. And then when that got sold, the wireless business, some friends introduced me to the people here in Cary, where I became the chief financial officer and the 5th employee of the company. In fact, our offices were here in Executive Circle when we started. There were 5 of us.
Wow.
I used to go to the Beaver's dentist when I was here too. Anyway, that was a long time ago. So that's what got us here. It was kind of chasing the idea and a place where I could feel comfortable. I love to finance companies. There's a lot of ways you can do it. And I've done them all. For this company here, we raised $4 billion along the way. And so I did IPOs and I was in the high yield bond market. I was in the convertible debt market. If you want to raise money, I can raise money. And it was fun.
Well, raising money.
Out of curiosity, the cable company you work for, who are they now? Are they Comcast? Or
they're Charter.
Oh, Charter.
Which is there's the 3 big ones now, right? So they were Charter. They sold out much later. But again, that was a fun atmosphere. I didn't really like living in Los Angeles. It's a different place.
Right.
Great weather. But it's when you come from the Midwest, it didn't feel right.
Yeah, so I'm going to digress a little bit just because I just happened to be in Cleveland last weekend and at a wedding at the courthouse. I stayed across the street in the Hilton.
Yeah.
Could look over and see the football stadium. So pretty much right on the lake, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was to the right. But we walked around a lot on Saturday, and you could tell the city was probably vibrant and had a lot of good things going for it, years and years ago. But unfortunately, it's not like it today. A lot of empty storefronts, for example, just some high rises, but I'm sure like most high rises these days are, 50% vacant or everybody's working from home or whatever. So I know you haven't been there in a long time, but it is your hometown. Like, if you were going to try to fix Cleveland, what would you do?
I've actually thought about that. It would need more money than what I have, but I think I'd go back to my old neighborhood and I'd start house by house, right? And provide some subsidy here if you follow my rules. We're going to clean up this block, and then we're going to clean up this block, we're going to clean up this block, and we're going to, as you know, because you've been involved, maybe you start a school who's got rules and regulations and a dress code, and you say you're going to follow this or you're not. Because I still remember the old neighborhood. I haven't gone and looked in a long time. Last time I did, it's almost scary to drive through. But that would be, if I had Bill Gates money, that's what I would do. I'd go back to the old neighborhood and I'd start here and I'd move block by block by block till you gave people a chance and an opportunity to do it on their own. So I don't go back there ever since my mother passed about 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I don't go back. My younger brother was still living in Cleveland, but now he's moved out on about an hour out of there. And I see him in Florida. We both go to Florida in the winter. So no need to go back there anymore. I did go to my 50th high school reunion, but now everyone's out in the suburbs. You don't, really go downtown. I was in the stadium, and I really had this fortunate sports watching. I was in the stadium in 1964 when the Browns won their last championship. It was really, really, really cold. Along the way, I've been to 6 Super Bowls, 2 final games of the NHL. I watched the finals when Michael Jordan was playing for the Bulls. I went to the World Series game when the Indians were playing Atlanta. So just kind of the luck of the draw, all through the business connections.
Sure. So you're in Alabama. How do you run into the Spectre Site guys down in Alabama? Like, how do you get?
Oh, no, it was an investment banker I knew.
Okay.
So he knew we were selling the company because he was financing it. And he knew that the guys in Cary were looking for a CFO. So it was just fortunate. I mean, I don't even think I missed a paycheck between selling one company and coming to work here. So we worked here. I was only in the company for 7 years. I retired pretty early, which was fortunate. I was the dad that, I'll tell you a good story. So we saw this thing, right? It was pretty valuable. We did pretty well. And I'm a pretty laid back guy. I don't have to go chase the next thing. And so I had some offers here. Well, one, we had just built our house down outside of Pinehurst, just finished it. And we had spent a year doing it. And then, we sold the company. And I was approached by a firm in Northern Virginia to do what I always do, which is come raise money. And my wife said, well, that wouldn't be too bad a commute for you. So then our old partner at Ernst & Young called me about another job that would have been here, so it would have been okay. And I said, that's fine. But I just tell them 2 things that, one, I don't want to be anywhere on 9 o'clock on Monday morning. And unless it's cold, I don't like to wear socks. They didn't call me back. I was shocked.
So talk a little bit about that Monday morning thing, because I remember you mentioned that to me years ago. And when did that start? And you're pretty strict about that, right?
No, I mean, if I had to do something Monday morning, I would. It's just for your whole career, right?
Right.
No matter what you did on Sunday, you're having a great time. You got to be there Monday morning at 9 o'clock. And I just said, well, I'm not doing that anymore. I did it for 40 years or whatever it was. So no. And so I haven't. Really what's happened since then, though, it makes my life a lot easier, is I got involved in some corporate board work. So it's fascinating. You only work with the upper levels of the company. You work with smart, people trying to work. So I now have, I think, on 4 different board of directors of all size. I'm the lead director of Caesars Entertainment, the largest casino and entertainment company in the United States. I'm on the board of a medical parts company in Grand Rapids. Been with them for 17, 18 years. And a new startup here that I have to get you involved in, which is my rum company, rum seltzer company, by Latinos for Latinos. When I stopped working, I went and taught at NC State in the Entrepreneurial program, and that was a blast. I still get, kids sending me notes or asking me. They appreciated what I did. I came in and said, "Look, I'm not a PhD. I'm gonna tell you what I know, and hopefully that helps you." And they all came back and said, "This is a great class. Thank you." So I did do that for a while, which was also fun. But then he's grading papers and stuff. I said, "I'm not doing this stuff anymore. got better things to do. So that keeps me busy and keeps me active, keeps me in the business world. I help raise money when it's time to raise money, which I did all my life. So that's a good thing. But again, you can do it. There's no set time, like Caesars has a meeting every quarter, and unless something's going on in between, that's all. I'm not up on Monday morning.
Wow.
Here's a hot take on some 50 Cups tea.
The Immune Booster tea helps your body to fight off disease due to its carefully crafted ingredients. It contains peppermint and spearmint, which strengthen the immune system and fight bacteria. Ginger, which fights disease through its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Echinacea, which modifies the immune system. Elderberry, which contains vitamin C, phenolic acids, flavonols, and anthocyanins, which modulates the body's immune response. And it also contains oregano, which has powerful antibacterial properties.
Visit 50cupstea.com to find out more.
To be in your position, really, I think most people would love to work to get to that point. And listening to you, it sounds like, you had to take risks throughout your career. You didn't seem to hesitate. Was it because the deals were that sure, or you were just that confident? Or a lot of people don't take those kinds of risks.
I think I was probably naive,
Oh,
to tell you the truth, particularly the one here. I had built my career, and every job I had, I made a little more money than the one before, and it was getting pretty good. And this one, before the sort of tech crash of 2000, we had a lot of paper money. We all, oh my God, we're rich. We're buying second homes and all this stuff. We're borrowing, being dumb and borrowing against the stock, right, which then became worthless. So there was a point where after all that I had worked for, and I was probably 50 years old, I was broke, right?
right.
I built up all this stuff because, we went gung-ho on what we were doing here, didn't see what was coming in front of us. It was like on the Titanic.
So you were broke at 50. What's
Pretty
that
much.
like?
It was scary because my kids were like 10 and 12. I would have been working. Boy, I tell you, I'd still be getting up on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. I can tell you that. I'd have had to work for a long time. And, it wasn't, I still had an IRA, I guess. It had a little in it. And the land I had bought outside of Pinehurst probably had the best value. Of course, we couldn't build on it after what happened until later. But no, and it was so risky. I talked to my older brother a lot about this. My younger brother has his own company. My older brother was always, typical oldest brother, a little more serious, just an absolutely incredible guy, but was security conscious, right? And I think he looks back now and says, well, maybe he could have taken a little more risk because my younger brother has his own company that's done very well. But again, I had to bail him out at one point when his thing got in trouble. So he and I took a lot more risk. And if it works out, it works out. But if it doesn't, had we lost our job in the middle of that, like I said, I'd still be working. So, but I don't think I don't chase risk, but it doesn't bother me.
When you were going through the broke stage, how did you weather the storm personally? If you were going to embark lessons on people that are listening today,
Well, yeah, you cut back your expenses. I doubt my younger son would have gone to Cary Academy, which is an expensive little place. You cut back vacations. Jane and I talked about, she said, well, I can go back to work if I have to go back to work. She had done marketing work for Dean Witter when we met. There's a lot of nights you wake up in the middle of the night sweating. I did another dumb investment later on. That same thing. I woke up in the middle of the night. I put a little too much in there and said, "Oh, this isn't working." Yeah. So now I've cut back on my risk.
Everybody I think says, maybe you haven't, but it's, if only I knew this when I was 20. Have you had those moments, looking back over your shoulder, where you can go, wow, if I knew today what I know when I was 20 years old, I'd be in a different spot. Is there anything like that?
I don't really think so, other than maybe I'd be a little more disciplined, exercised a little more, kept myself a little more focused on things, not letting things take me where they did, maybe a little more proactive.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I look at where I am and what I've done, and I go, pretty good. I'm a pretty lucky guy.
Yeah. For folks who are watching, I mean, almost everybody, honestly, I think has this dream of being where you are, or to have themselves like you, Jim, an entrepreneur, this entrepreneurship that a lot of people have, but will never, ever, ever take that first step. Would you encourage people to do it? Do you have to have a certain kind of character, an upbringing, a belief system to take that kind of risk?
I think it's kind of the way you're structured, is whether, can you handle that kind of risk? It's in your personality, I think. Again, sometimes you just fall into it. I don't know. I don't know that I would say, do this or do that.
Right.
What I'd say is, read a lot, pay attention to what's going on around you, and if you see an opportunity, go after it. But it usually will come from, I think you need a little experience first. You see these 18-year-olds in Silicon Valley when they're the CEO of a company, and I go, I don't know, that's a good idea, So I think you need a little experience first, and then depending on where you are, your home situation, what you've got, go at it if you want to. Most guys who do it are much more type A personalities than I am.
Right.
Just the way it is. I've and I tell people too, look for a mentor, both good and bad, right? In my career, I worked for a lot of people, and, the ability, the number of good managers of people out there is negligible, right?
Oh.
So I think you can look for a mentor, but look both ways. Look at one person who, you can see screwing it up and say, all right, I won't do what he's doing. And over here, you got the guy who's doing it right. And you say, that's what he's doing. And a lot of it is, follow the people that you can trust, that have integrity. I've worked for some people who were very, very successful. I mean, millionaires and maybe even a billionaire. And I wasn't quite certain that I'd follow the way they did things from an ethical perspective.
So as an investor, since you were really good at finding the money, raising money for companies, how do you know what to invest in now? Because you and I have had some startup, with some of these young, entrepreneurs out of NC State. And what I've learned is a lot of these potential entrepreneurs, they're really good at raising money, right? Selling the dream, et cetera, but they're not very good at executing. And since you were in that fundraising world, how do you get past that to determine if that person's going to actually be able to execute what they're raising money for?
What I've learned is I'm not very good at it, right? I've done a lot of angel investing since I retired, and it does work like the venture capital model. I did have one big hit that's paying for all the dumb ones that I've done. Because most of them, that has been the case. I'm better off having someone bring me the deal that they've already vetted.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's not it's like looking at stocks, right? That was my job as a public company CFO. Most of what I did was to go talk to investors, Fidelity and Capital Research and Vanguard, and I would go to Wall Street or Boston, all over the country, really to tell our story, right? Because I knew our business really well. But if you asked me to invest in John Deere today, I'd say, what the hell do I know about the farm tractor business? That was another thing that was interesting. When I look back on all this stuff and what I've been able to do when I was doing that, I used to get a call about every 6 to 8 months from Peter Lynch, the famed investor from Fidelity. And we would just talk for half an hour, and he'd wait till after hours and call me. But it was wow, this is who I'm talking to. That was kind of interesting. But for the other stuff, interestingly enough, I'm learning more and more as it goes on. My rum company right now, best group of young guys I've ever worked with. They're killing it. There's now just 2 Latino guys who went to state. They're from Venezuela, and their story is that the Gen Z is at least 25% Latino in this country, and they're going to set the rap music, and they've got some of the leading music artists and everything else purchasing and whatever. So their whole concept. So I love the concept. These guys are working really hard. They're very, very sharp. But again, it's turned out to be difficult to raise money. And again, because I bought the story about the Latino angle, but I didn't know anything about the alcohol business. And you don't throw a couple $100,000 out there and start an alcohol company. It takes millions, as we've proven so far.
Just because the big guys have a lock on everything?
Yeah, there's a learning curve. You got to learn to make the product, and then that takes some money. You got to get a distributor. That becomes the key. Mm-hmm. So we went to one distributor, and now it turns out maybe we're better off. We thought maybe you distribute through the liquor distributors. Turns out maybe you should distribute through the beer distributors. There's a big learning curve here. So hopefully it works. But it's been a lot of fun. A dedicated group of people. Best I've worked with, quite frankly.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about your family. Obviously, your wife, Jane.
Yeah, I have my wife, Jane, who I met when I was in California. I think we've been married for 34 or something like that years. My older son, Jack, is here in town. He went to Green Hope High here in Cary, played on 2 state championship golf teams. So he's quite a golfer, and he's married to Carly, who's a nurse at not Wake Med, Rex, in the cardiovascular area, mm-hmm. which is good because I've been in there a couple of times.
The inside scoop, huh?
Yeah, and so she's been a delightful addition to the family, and now we have a 2-year-old granddaughter named Rory, like the golfer.
Oh, cool.
My younger son, Will, works for Town Bank here in town. Is buying his first townhouse this month. Again, really close to us, so that's a good thing.
That's great. So was Jan a really good golfer? Because how did Jack get his talent? Because I've golfed with you.
Yeah, it didn't come from me. Well, there's a difference. I mean, I started when I was 45. He started when he was 5.
Right.
I've always thought that golf and snow skiing, you have to start when you're like really young. I went snow skiing for the first time in Colorado when I was like 35. I looked down the hill and said, Jesus, this could hurt.
I know when you're a kid, you're fearless, right?
When you're 5 years old, you're low to the ground. It doesn't bother you at all. So I think that in golf, because the swing's kind of weird to me. So he just started playing early, and, he's one of these 30-year-old kids that hits the ball 315 yards. So, but we have a lot of fun. Everyone's here. That I knew that my dad, my poor dad, he so loved his kids, and and only one of his kids stayed at home after college. I know it drove him crazy. So I worked real hard to try to make sure the kids stayed here.
Family's tight. You want a tight family?
Oh yeah. I have 2 brothers, an older brother, younger brother, and a sister. And my sister just retired and moved here. So she can go with us. My brothers have come for years to go play golf in Pinehurst. And this year, my sister is joining us, and they came that week before Halloween, or the week right after Halloween, where it rained here every day, mm-hmm. the morning till night. So that sort of cut the golf out. So we were going to move. But anyway, the 4 of us spent then we said, this isn't working. So we went to Florida. So I'll bet the 4 of us spent 10 days together, just hanging out. We hadn't done that in maybe 50 years. So that was really special. Yeah. So we all talk. My younger brother still has his company. I'm on his board. My older brother does the marketing for him, and we help him run that business. My sister was living in Texas, got divorced, moved here. So she and I have always been close. And so that, I have some family here. 2 of my wife's brothers have moved down here. So we have a lot more family, which makes the holidays a little better.
It's kind of cool when you move to an area that everybody loves, and they all come down. It's kind of cool when you're by yourself too, but then it's better when you have a bunch of family.
Rather have them here.
Same thing happened to me too.
Yeah. I tried to get my older brother to move here, and he would have done it for a heartbeat, but he's got, 3 daughters and a whole slew of grandkids up there.
Sure.
Not happening.
Tough to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love to, one of his son-in-laws, I played golf. I must have been Saturday. I think it was 0 in Chicago. So I sent him a note text on Saturday and said, "Boy, golfing was great here today. Did you play?" I send him one of those once a year.
That's hilarious. Just real quick, since you're in the gaming industry right now, and I know you got to be careful what you say, but what is that? That was like the greatest craze in the world, 4 or 5 years ago when everything went digital and with DraftKings, and you could bet everywhere now in your sleep, while you're working, whatever. Where do you see it going down the road? Do you see it consolidating? Do you see it expanding more?
Oh, it'll keep going. The sports betting keeps growing and growing because you have to wait. It's licensed at the state. So you're always waiting for a new state to grant your license. For example, we just got qualified in Missouri. So now we'll open up shop in Missouri, and so that'll grow. So this is a business, the sports bet, what we call the digital business, which is sports betting and then online gambling. So playing blackjack, right? Suburban women like to play blackjack.
Really?
So anyway, we started this thing on the digital side probably three or 4 years ago, and by the end of this year, we ought to be making about $500 billion. I'm sorry, $500 million. So it's growing rapidly. What's going on right now that's very interesting is there's now these new companies that are called the prediction market. The biggest one you name you'd see would be Kashi, Kashi, and they started off taking bets on elections. And now they've branched into sports. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens because they don't have to have, they've gone through like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange because they're calling these things contracts. They're not bets, they're contracts. So obviously they're not paying the tax that we pay to the state government. So you can imagine in Nevada, if these people came in and took our business away, the government would lose a ton. The same thing in Illinois. Some of these tax rates, we pay in Illinois, we probably pay 35-40% of what we make to the state. Okay, so they don't want this to happen. The offset to that is there's no legal sports betting in California or Texas. So, we could go in using these prediction markets into those markets, but until the dust settles, we're not going there. But in general, the business keeps going. People are going to go to Las Vegas no matter what. It's a way different town than I remember when I was a young banker, you went there and you get a room for $15, $20. They had a buffet. It was the best thing you could eat. Now you've got all these very high-end restaurants, very high-end. Yeah. And it's a very expensive place to go, but it's got sort of a little bit of everything.
So when you say contracts, how's that different than just betting?
It isn't as a practical matter, but from a legal standpoint, it is.
And they don't have to pay tax on it?
They're not paying tax to the state.
So how long before the legislatures figure that out?
It'll go to the Supreme Court.
What?
Yeah, that's our take.
Wow.
But it's a fun business to be involved in. It's easy to understand. It's cash. Not a lot of sophisticated accounting. And I get to go, we have like 52 properties, I think, something like that. So we hold the meetings. We don't always go to Las Vegas. We go around. I was in Illinois and Indiana last month or in October. So I see different parts of the world, not just Las Vegas, although I have to go to Las Vegas at least once or twice a year. Once you've been there 10 times, it loses a little allure. But.
So from an online digital perspective, you mentioned the suburban housewife likes to play blackjack. Are there any other demographic surprises as it relates to gambling as well?
No, nothing, no surprises. These young kids, you don't go anywhere. They're not betting. I'm sitting at home watching the game. The kids are over here on the phone and, doing parlay bets, which I told them not to do. The parlay bets are good for us and not so good for the bettor. You're betting. You can bet them now across multiple sports. You could bet that, a certain hockey player scores a goal, football player runs for 150 yards and soccer team in London scores 2 goals. You can make that bet all at one time. And if you hit it, it pays well. The problem is we do better than most people.
Yeah. House always wins.
Exactly.
You have a favorite age? I don't know how old you are now, but look back over your life, and was there a time of your life you favor more than another, or no regrets?
Oh, I don't. There's a number of them. I mean, right now it's pretty nice, but I would say when I was 14.
Being a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a really good basketball player, and then at the school, this is the school, the one that was predominantly Jewish, and they didn't play as much basketball as I did, so it was easy to be good. But because I was in the city, we played a lot of basketball, and I was really good. And you had no responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
You had to do schoolwork, but schoolwork always came easy to me. So other than that, you didn't have to do anything except play sports and hang out with your buddies. I had my first girlfriend. I mean, it was a great. Once I hit 16, I had to have a job in the summertime. My basketball career ended quickly. The people got bigger and faster than me really fast. So that didn't go much past high school. I mean, I still played in high school, but not like I wasn't as good as I was before. So no, really, that's right now it's pretty good,
Yeah.
Although you get older, you start having ailments.
I've forgotten about 14. 14 was a good year. Really was.
Yeah.
For me, anyway.
Good for you two guys.
Yeah.
I was a late bloomer, so I'll say high school wasn't my spot.
No. Do you want to do takeaways?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is where your wisdom comes out. Dave. I mean, if you look over your shoulder, this interview, people listening, 5 takeaways that you might have.
I saw the notes on that, and I thought 5. Holy moly. I got a couple, One, reading. I always thought that reading helped me. I was a vociferous reader, and so it makes you aware of things. So you combine the reading with, trying to pay attention. I remember when I first went to work for the bank, my dad took me to this guy he knew in an alley that would get us a suit for, $29 or something. But I paid attention to the older people. What did they wear? A nice pinstripe. I remember when I got my first pinstripe suit, I thought, all right, I'm getting to where I want to be, right? I can see these guys running the division over here. He's wearing that. So pay attention to what's going on around you. I think always, I don't care. There's a lot of people who make money cutting corners, and that's not for me. I think you're still better off in the long run being ethical, moral. I don't push the moral thing too much, but being ethical and doing the right thing, I think you'll win in the end.
Where does that come from?
My parents, be my guess.
Yeah.
Kind of taught the right thing to do. None of us ever really went too far off track.
Yeah.
Because they would have pulled us back in. Obviously working hard doesn't hurt. You got to put in the time. Be considerate. Watch for someone, who's doing the right thing, a mentor, who can help you get somewhere. Other than that, I couldn't think of 5.
Did good. You did well.
I got this sock ball idea. In case you guys want to hang after the podcast, we can talk a little bit. But what a pleasure, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was nice meeting you and the words of wisdom, too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was good.
Yeah.
Now, you would probably say to Jim, hey, where can I get that tea again?
Yeah.
Then aren't you curious? Jim, where do we get that tea again?
Better get it quick because it's about 10 more days in the year. 50cupstea.com.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jim. Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Hot Takes 50 Cups. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to visit our website at 50cupstea.com for more great content and delicious organic teas, and listen and watch us on all the leading platforms. Stay connected with us on Instagram at 50cupstea, YouTube, and TikTok. And don't forget to subscribe. leave a review, and share with your friends. Until next time, keep sipping and stay united.